When you're aware of social issues, what are you going to do? You can be guilty, you can be fearful, or you can feel motivated.
That's one of the things I told you that maybe was brought about for me by watching the movie was the enormity of the whole situation. The idea that 2 million children that's being trafficked, and then you look and see, well, then how many consumers are there?
America's number one in consuming child pornography. That's sad. If the demand goes away,
problems gone.
ends.
The Mike Charleston Show.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in and watching. And so we got a little housekeeping here. Larry is not with us today. That's kind of sad.
Oh.
Yeah, he's in Florida visiting the home. I guess they had like that's a little late, but yeah, he's it's sad. So he's not going to be joining us today, so no history time with Larry for all you history people out there looking forward.
Larry?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
He's visiting someone. 60th.
We just lose.
I think there was a 60th wedding anniversary that they're going to.
That's what I heard.
So yeah. Well, good for them. So they get to go back home, but not to their home. I don't know where they're staying. That's going to be odd for them. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They have friends. Oh, okay. Hey, sorry, Larry. Okay. So anyway, so that's we've got a very interesting show for you today, and so we look forward to this. So, Chuck, what do we got going on today?
So yeah, it's kind of a different show today. Somewhat, we're going to delve into more of social issue, I guess you would say.
Social issues, yeah.
So we all went to see Sound of Freedom, the movie. I didn't know anything about this movie until it actually came out a week ago.
Okay.
But all of us have gone to see it, and we're going to talk about not necessarily the movie itself, but some of the ramifications. What does it portray? What does it mean to us? What does it bring about? How do we respond?
Yeah, so just a little background. The movie Sound of Freedom is about human trafficking that's still going on today. And so Sarah and I are very aware of this already, as you are. Yeah. Maybe not to the enormity of what it is. So it was the main point of the movie was to bring awareness.
Absolutely was,
and I think that is very much needed. You know, I think most people, especially here in America, have their heads buried in the sand of what's going on in the world today. We don't get involved. And now, I'm not very involved politically. You know, that is not me at all. But I do appreciate when people get involved. You know, the abortion issue. People go out. Now, I don't always like the methods, so that's why I don't join people. But I do appreciate them trying something.
Right. And I have, I've had children who have been very involved on the street doing ministry at the abortion clinics. I've done a little myself. They've done more than I have. But that's a topic a discussion we've had before is, the methods differ.
Yeah.
And it's difficult in how people come about either accusatory or blaming or just condemning, or they're coming in to be understanding and try to help.
Sure.
It depends on circumstances. One of the things that we, and talking to my daughter Rebecca, I came to understand is they all have some benefit to them, which is, to me, is counterproductive to come in and just blast somebody for what they're doing and just call them down and sound offensive. Right. But in reality, that's going to affect some people better in one way that others wouldn't.
Right. I don't always like all the methods, but they all have a place. If that makes sense. You know, it's not my thing, but maybe someone needed that, or maybe someone needed this. And so if you have a bunch of it, I don't know. But look, I'm all for legislation, for righteousness, but we're going to talk later. You can't pass laws to make people moral. At the end of the day, it's got to come from the heart.
That's right. I'm obviously more politically involved than you are. I do go out and vote every time I have that given the opportunity. But one of the things that drives me is more how that's going to impact the laws of the land.
Sure.
Point in place, I remember a number of years ago, I guess it was 2016 when the presidency and Trump was running. I remember talking to my son-in-law, and my stance to him at that point in time, because it dwindled down, there wasn't as many. I don't like Trump.
Right. personally.
Just personally, I don't like him. I don't think he's a good person. I don't want him around my kids. I wouldn't do that. He's not going to go date my daughter, that kind of thing. But I knew from his actions that he was going to make good selections when it came to judges, and I knew he was going to have the opportunity to choose at least two Supreme Court justices. I told him that's the reason I will vote for him.
Sure.
That came to pass.
Right.
And it actually played out to where it overturned Roe versus Wade. So I got what I voted for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that kind of leads into the subject today that, we have laws in America so far, as of right now, against, child pornography and human trafficking in America. I'm sure it happens, obviously. But it's not legal. And so at least there's laws in place that if these things are going on, people can get arrested and justice can be done. In other countries, it could be a free-for-all out there. And that's we do want laws in place to protect our society. That's for sure. So anyway, that's kind of what we're talking about today is a few of these social issues. So just by watching that movie, it just triggered a couple of, things that we wanted to talk about. Like human trafficking, drug trafficking. In fact, the drug problem in America is rampant. Just here in Baton Rouge, we have so many people dying of fentanyl poisoning. Right. It's ridiculous. And that is being swept under the rug too. It's just drugs are out there. These young people are experimenting. It's almost like the 60s again, except for they're wealthy.
Right, that's right.
So, it's a problem.
We live in an area, is it worse here than other places? I don't know, but we live on the I-20 corridor, as they call it. So the free flow of traffic from Mexico.
You mean I-10 or the?
I-10, yes. I'm sorry, okay. I-20. I'm in Mississippi. I'm farther right. No, I-10 corridor, that's what I meant to say. Thank you for the correction. And, the accessibility of the traffic coming through here is great.
I mean, it goes all the way from Florida to California.
Right.
And it goes straight across. So, it takes a while to get there, but there is access, and there is, the drug problem, the human trafficking, and we're going to use that term because I know YouTube, we can't say certain terms.
Yeah, and we actually may get demonetized.
That's right. If we were ever monetized, then great. But human trafficking, I think you understand what we're talking about when we're talking about human trafficking. It's not just slavery. It's also perversion. That we're trying to be very sensitive to maybe younger listeners. But drugs, trafficking, abortion, there's these issues out there that aren't necessarily going to save people's souls. So as Christians, we're here to spread a message of the gospel. But while we're here, there is still good things to do. Like if I know that someone is being trafficked, I would want to help them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't just stand by and pretend like nothing's happening. Same thing if someone is being attacked. We're here to defend,
Supposed to be.
Hopefully, right?
Hopefully you would.
I know there's a lot of instances, when we were doing inner city ministry, there was a lot of instances, you don't know what to do, and you just have to turn the other cheek, not the other cheek, but turn your eyes and be like, that doesn't concern you. And I'm like, but it doesn't concern you. And you have to walk away because what are you going to do? You're surrounded by gang members and, different things, and you feel helpless, and kind of like what we'll talk about with this movie, you feel helpless in a way. But anyway, why don't we just go ahead and get right into it then?
So let's talk about, responses to the movie. You're talking about how you feel helpless. You listed 3 of them here. How does it leave you feeling after being made aware of issues that are occurring around you where otherwise maybe you didn't know it, or maybe you didn't know the enormity of it? Or
Yes. Yeah. So I had 3, but actually I think there's a 4th one, and we'll talk about that. But first, let me
see what your 4th one is, because if it's not mine, then I'll add the 5th.
Okay. There could be a few more. But first, I do want to tell you that it is good to be aware of things out there, to get out of our little bubble. Sometimes we can be in our little circles and put our head in the sand and pretend like nothing's happening. But there is a world out there, and we should know what is going on. So raising awareness of this is a good thing.
Yes, it is.
And we'll talk about that later when it comes to parenting. We need to let our kids be aware of certain things in stages. We don't need to unload on them when they're 5 and tell them the realities of the world, and they're like, what? But
so you mentioned that.
careful.
It's interesting. I know it was a struggle for my wife as to whether to go and see the movie or not.
Right.
I don't know if it was for Sarah. I mean, it wasn't something you really want to go do.
Right. It's not
It's not a movie you want to go see.
Right. I didn't want to go see it personally. I probably would have saw it eventually, but it wasn't like something that I was like, ooh, let me go see this. It definitely wasn't pleasurable.
No. It wasn't pleasurable. I kind of wanted to go more to support. I knew a little bit about it, and I just thought, well, I'd like to go and just to see, I don't know, I guess what they put out. And, it was somewhat shocking to me, though, just because of knowing.
It puts a name to a number.
Yeah, like I know numbers,
and
I've read different books and heard. I'm aware of the issue, but just seeing the faces, I don't know. It was actually really tough for me.
Our daughter is a movie maker. She's a wannabe movie maker, and she's made a few movies, and that is the power of the media. It can be good and bad. And this can raise awareness in many different ways, just like other movies have in the past. But anyway.
No, for Jeannie, it was some of the struggle to begin with. She's like, I don't want to go see that. That's not something I want to see, and it's like I don't need to go see that. I already know.
Right.
But as the days went on, it's like maybe I do. Maybe it's going to do something that's going to create a response in me, and we'll talk about responses that I need.
Right.
So we did end up going. But it's interesting that you say that about the movie and the format. We were talking about this before the show. One of the differences about this movie is to maybe some other ones that we can think of. This movie was made for awareness and it was brought out in a time where this is still occurring.
Yes.
You think of something like Schindler's List.
Right.
Happened many, many, many years later.
Passed.
It was great at bringing out what happened.
Right.
But it's beyond. It's not doing anything for awareness. It's just history. Yeah. This was made in a point in time where this is occurring.
Very few movies are current.
Right.
So that is a good point, So going back to the responses now.
Yes,
so,
back to the responses.
When you're watching something like this, or when you're aware of social issues and brought to your forefront, what are you going to do? The transient of America is a big deal. What are you going to do? So there's a number of responses. He came up with 3, maybe 4, and maybe Chuck's going to add a 5th. But number 1 is you can feel guilty that you've never done anything, you weren't aware, and you could just be like, man, I feel bad. I feel bad that I'm not doing anything, which can be a fine feeling, I guess. It is what it is. You feel guilty. You feel fearful. I feel like this movie, particular, would maybe people are like, kids, stay here.
It's gonna.
We do get fearful, especially with this subject. Human trafficking is. You want to keep an eye on your kids a lot more. You want to put them in that bubble.
Well, it's actually in an interview that I listened to on another podcast. Mm-hmm. Tim Ballard actually said that he got to a point with his own kids that maybe he was overprotective just because of the fact he was dealing with it. Yep. He didn't say it in those terms, but it was an issue.
Yeah, I can believe that, and that's we've known about this issue for many years, and that's why one of the reasons why we homeschooled and from the very beginning. And this was we were very aware, but we had to be very careful not to become too fearful. And so you can be guilty, you can be fearful, or you can feel motivated. I'm going to do something about this. Now I'm made aware. So what am I going to do? I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to go out and search and see how I can be a part of this. Can I give money to this? Is there a local chapter that I can volunteer my time? Whatever the issue is. Those are like the 3 responses. The 4th one I thought of was you can feel indifferent. You can just be like,
whatever.
I'm not going to do anything. I don't care. I just don't care. that's a sad place to be.
That's a hard one to even comprehend.
Well, this is a Christian show, so I'd like to think that people care.
Yeah.
But there's probably a lot of people that just don't care about abortion. I'm sure they don't care about human trafficking. It doesn't affect them. So why would it bother them? And that's sad, when you're just totally indifferent. That's one of those issues. There's a lot of Christian issues that we discuss. Even on the show, we talk about a lot of issues, controversial issues. And the thing that bugs me the most about people is, I don't care if you disagree with me. At least have a position. What bugs me the most are the people who don't care.
Yeah, the indifference.
Right. They're like, what's the big problem? Who cares? I don't, whatever. Can't we just sing Kumbaya or something? But it's an issue. It's a Christian issue. It's a biblical issue. We need to figure it out. We can do this in love, and I get it. Sometimes it's not in love, and it causes division, and that's a problem. But the bigger problem is when people just don't care. Just let me watch my Netflix tonight and I can go to bed.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your...
Well, I thought, just a second, we'll get to his, but I did think, with this coming out and so many people watching it, which I think the numbers have been good,
yeah.
I have been interested to see what will the response be. Because when the dust settles and, do
we just go back to our normal lives?
Do we? We'll say, oh yeah, we care, but and I realize not all of us can do something or whatever, but...
Well, we'll give you some things to do later on.
But there are people that can. There are people that, can really make a difference. Yeah. And it's like, will people want to, or will we all just kind of lull ourselves back to our normal lives? So that's hopefully not what happens. But anyway, all right, Chuck, what's your number 5?
So my number 5 was the way I felt, and that was, I told y'all that on Sunday. And it had more than just the movie that brought this about, but I was left feeling depressed.
Okay. I see what I can see that.
And the reason being,
I would put that under guilty, though.
It probably would feel under guilty for
but you're depressed.
Sense, but it was just the
overwhelming,
overwhelming presence of evil, in the world, and just another realization that this world is under the dominion of evil.
Yes. It's not our home.
It's not our home. Nope. This is not what we're supposed to be. And I struggled Saturday night and Sunday morning. Very happy to come and be able to worship and fellowship and get beyond the feeling of depression, because that was tough.
It is. And when you surround yourself with some of these things, it can be overwhelming. Watching that movie, and I keep referring to the movie, but it could be any issue. But specifically this one, it seems so large. Like, what could I do? And especially the way they portrayed it. He lost his job, and he had a big time money guy to help him out, and then he had an ex drug cartel guy. So he had things, and yet he only saved, and I say only, but he saved over 120 kids. And in those years, and I'm like, 120 kids is a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
And it took all those resources and time and risking your life. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, that is discouraging. It's like, well, what can I do? And we'll talk about things that we can do later. But it is kind of depressing when you look at and you just see the media and you see the people who are standing for all this evil, and it feels overwhelming. And it is a good reminder that this is not our home, and that one day Jesus is coming back. But while we're here, do what we can do. Pray, figure out what God wants you to do, and do it. And if it costs you something, it's going to cost you something. That's the one thing. No matter what you think about all these issues, if you take it seriously, the Christian life is free. It is a free gift by God. But it's going to cost you everything, because and at the end it's really not a cost, because this is the way I would want to live anyways. I would want to serve my King in service of Him, but it's not my life anymore. It's His life, and so the more selfish I am, the more problems I have. But the more that I give it to God, the less. I shouldn't say less problems, because actually there probably is more problems from the outside world. But the fellowship I have with Christ and the Holy Spirit and with my wife and family, is there's nothing that can compare with that, no matter what's coming against us. So even when you're depressed, you can come amongst believers and friends and be refreshed.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated that Sunday, actually, because sometimes you just go through the motions, and I was feeling like we're just singing songs, and this doesn't matter. And so that's why I said what I said beforehand. It's like, guys, we are singing in the presence of angels and all this, and they're looking down. And anyways, and who knew that you needed that today?
Yeah, I did. That was good.
Whatever day it was. It wasn't today.
So taking the responses and looking at that fact that we can't stay within our bubble, there is something that we always should have to do, and that is we need to stand for truth.
Yes.
So what are some things, we're getting to, I guess, a little bit, what can we do or what can't we do? But we always need to stand on the side of truth. We need to be there and stand up so that the evil doesn't just take over.
Right. And this is a tough one because it's a sliding scale here. We're talking about human trafficking and abortion and great evils, but it's even if you're in school and you're being challenged with evolution, and are you going to stand up and say, I don't believe this? And you're like, oh, that's a small thing. It is a small thing, but it's a big thing to actually stand up for truth and to be ridiculed in front of your classmates because, you're going to stand up. But I guarantee you there's other people in that room that are thinking the same thing, and they just don't have the courage either. So standing for truth takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of boldness, and you're going to be ridiculed a lot. I was watching a number of these debates last night. These Christian apologists. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And they stand in that place where they are getting a lot of attack and they have to defend. And they did a very good job of defending and actually attacking back in a gentle way. But that is the stand for truth, to stand for what Jesus is, the resurrection, that is being true and what we believe in the scriptures. But what we wanted to get to was that, standing for truth, how did we get here? With the laws won't fix morality, right?
Yeah.
No.
And that's but we want laws.
We want laws so that we actually in society we have a society that is resembles something that makes sense. It's not chaos. It's not.
Right.
We haven't just come into complete deviation from whatever is against our conscience. We have to have. Otherwise, society just falls.
Yes, and we see that around the world, that there's certain societies that have fallen because there is no basis, there's no foundation. But I guess the point being is that sometimes we put our trust in these laws. And so we get involved and we still think, the laws are going to change America and change the world and we're going to be a better place. It still doesn't fix things. It just makes things nicer for us, and makes things where we can get along with each other, but it's not going to change the heart still. No. If the laws won't change that part. No. And so that's why I wanted to get across is that it's good to get involved, but don't put your trust in passing of laws, like the abortion, Roe v. Wade being overturned. It's a great thing, but it didn't change really anybody's hearts in that process. It just...
Well, and for most of us, we aren't involved enough to make a change in the system, the laws, and all of that. But what we can do is each of us individually and collectively, we do stand for truth. And if we do, then that can bring about much good.
As like you mentioned before, with the topic of this particular movie, the trafficking of young children, it's against the law.
Right.
It's already there, and it still happens. I mean, we see the numbers, and that's one of the things I told you that maybe was brought about for me by watching the movie was the enormity of the whole situation. The idea that the numbers show, or at least consider that there's 2 million children that's being trafficked and sold. And then you look and see, well, then how many consumers?
That's it. America's number one in consuming child pornography. That's sad. We were talking about this off air. If the demand goes away, it ends. Yes. So the problem is multifaceted. Yes, there are these evil people that are willing to take kids and sell them. and all that. But there's also evil people who are watching it and who are consuming this. And if you don't have consumers, you don't have a product. I mean, it works on TV all the time, right? If no one's watching the show, it gets canceled. And so you can make a statement by, I'm not watching this because it's ungodly. And if enough people stand up and do that, this show's off the air. But if enough people are wanting to promote transient of America, you know, and the LGBTQ community and all that, it's going to keep going. But when people refuse and stand up and say, no, we're not supporting all of this nonsense, then there might be a pushback. But so America is number one in, I don't know about producing it. I think Mexico's number one in producing it, and America's number one in consuming it. And I think, now correct me, I might have to have a little fix on the YouTube channel here, but I think it's a $135 billion industry. That's crazy. They had a little stat there that said like Disney, ESPN, Fox News, or something like that, all these companies combined, not even close. So this is a big time moneymaker. And the only reason it exists is because there are people who are willing to participate in this.
Right.
So if those people don't go along with this, it ends tomorrow. But unfortunately, we have a sinful, sick world, and it's evil, and so we should do something about those people. That's for sure. But anyway, standing for truth, freedom comes with a price, and so when you stand up for truth, it's going to cost you something. Now, maybe on a small scale, it may cost you being made fun of, right?
Right.
But that's, okay, so what? You might lose a couple friends, or you might lose a couple subscribers on YouTube, or you might, whatever, if you stand for truth. Or all the way to the other end where you might demand your life. It might sacrifice your life. So there's a wide range between there, but freedom comes at a price. I mean, I'm not a big-time patriot, rah-rah America. I'm glad to live here. I love my country, don't get me wrong. But I'm not proud to be an American with these things that are going on in America right now. And it's not just America. I'm not picking on America, but that's where we live. It's all over the world.
Yeah, it's all over the world, but definitely more in Western society.
Yes. It's sick.
Yeah,
the freedoms that we have paid with blood that people spilled. And this is what we're doing, is great evil, and there's so much great evil out there, and are we just going to bury our head in the sand? Or are we going to get involved? And so, like, how can we get involved? You say. So I don't know. So what do you have to say, babe? You've been quiet.
I know. I mean, it is just, I guess I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I do find the whole thing somewhat overwhelming. Like, it's just hard to know. I'm still processing, I guess.
Still processing it?
Yeah.
Well, you've been involved before. I mean, you actually got arrested. So, participating in some events, it wasn't Antifa. But,
No, but I do have a sorted past. But
yes.
But no, I guess for me, I'm like, I feel motivated to pray. That's what I was talking to you earlier about, like how to pray, and
that's the least thing we can do, right? That's the absolute least we can do.
Yeah, except I don't feel like it's right to say least.
Well, no, but I mean, it's when I say least, like it's easy to do.
Yeah.
Like, we can pray.
Right.
Like, actually get in a plane and going over to Colombia and getting involved is probably unrealistic for most people.
It is. But it did make me think, maybe we could just go over there and, like, we could take in some of these people. Anyway.
This is why we don't go to the movies.
But anyway, I did think, well, I mean, I can pray and obviously look for many other things to do, but I do feel very motivated to pray and, pray in different ways.
Sure.
But, I'll have to see if I'm right about those or not.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Anyway.
So let's talk about the difference between Christian ideology and the world's ideologies. We're talking about these subjects.
Yes, because we wanted to talk about, like, it's important because, especially what we just watched, right? When you're talking about trafficking, human slavery and human trafficking and abortion and just all these, where is this coming from? And when you're talking about what's going on in society, where the world says just be true to yourself, and it feels good, do it. Yeah. And so we have a movement going on in America the last few years. I guess they call it the transient of America. I don't know what you would call it. The Pride. We just had Pride. The Pride Month.
Pride Month in June, yeah.
Right, where the LGBTQ plus whatever, all these people are being proud of what they are. And I think that's the difference. Where the Christian identifies that, hey, we're sinners. We were in sin and God redeemed us, but we don't stay in our sin. Right. And we recognize that this is wrong, and we repent, we change, we let God do his work in our life, and we don't brag about our sins. We don't. Now, I know they don't think it's sinful. I get all that. I understand what they're saying, but it is sinful. It is wrong. And so their ideology is like, well, it feels good. And so there's an agenda out there, and so you don't even know what a woman is, a man is. Mix it all up, trans it up, so you can be a guy but dress like a girl and choose to be a girl. You can do all these other things. You can have multiple partners. You can. It never satisfies when you become a sexual deviant. And yes, I use that term on purpose because they are. It starts with heterosexuals having, relations, multiple relationships, but that's not good enough. So we turn to bi, and then we maybe go to homosexual, or maybe start a homosexual. It goes and goes and goes, and we say, well, is it ever going to go to bestiality? Is it ever going to go to pedophilia? What do they call them? MAPS?
Pedophiles.
Pedophiles. Is it going to go to pedophilia?
Pedophilia.
Yeah, pedophilia.
There you go.
And they would like to push back and say that's pushing it too far. Well, 50 years ago, what this is, the movement that is, was too far. So are we going to allow...
We can look back short term. Because it wasn't too many years ago, 5-10 years ago, just leave us alone and accept us.
Yeah, right.
Nothing. We just want to be left alone and accepted.
Right.
We're doing our own thing. You don't agree with it. Just leave us alone.
Which no one is actually persecuting them. It wasn't like we were dragging them out in the streets or anything like that.
But then they wanted. Then it went to, well, we want to be accepted and we want to have some benefits. So the whole concept of same-sex marriage came about, and we want to have the same benefits since we're living. And this is my partner. This is one will be able to call it not just a partner but a husband or whatever it might be. And now we're to the point where it's not only do you accept us, not only do we have the benefits, you have to celebrate it.
Yes. And we don't celebrate sin.
And we're probably going to get kicked off YouTube now.
Right. So I don't celebrate sin, and that's the difference. You can live how you want to live. That's your choice, and we have the freedom in America to do that. I'm not going to try to put you in jail for that unless it's illegal, like pedophilia. But it's when you stand for truth, there has to be a place where this is right, this is wrong. And I'm not just going to accept it because people might look at me funny or cancel me or whatever. It's like, no, I'm going to stand for truth. And I think that's the difference between the ideologies. The world is just like whatever goes. Well, that ideology is going to fail. It's going to fail. You can't have just whatever goes because it keeps pushing the limits. Someone's going to say, well, what about me? What about me? What about me? Or in 10 years, are they going to have the pedophiles? Are they going to have the MAPS people join them? And we would say that is an abomination. All these things we would say is an abomination. But having young children, that's just, we can't have that, and that's the sad part. So sin progresses. It's if we don't have any sense of control, and the Christian worldview is we're not claiming to be perfect, but we recognize when we sin, and we that is not who we are. We're Christ-like. We want to be like Christ, and so we turn away from it as soon as possible. Hopefully, no one here in the room is claiming to be perfect, but by God's grace, He has set us free, and we can walk in victory, and we do walk in victory most of the time. And there are times where maybe we slip up and stumble, do something stupid. But if you call a spade, and you just say, this is wrong, we need to control ourselves, and God wants us to control our vessels, and the world doesn't want to. For whatever reason, I think there's a multifaceted agenda out there that's evil, that wants us to just have total freedom and do as much drugs as you want and get together with as many people, and it doesn't matter what kind of people, and it just whatever feels good, do it.
Right.
That's a terrible ideology.
And as Christians, we've got to get rid of the idea or the mentality that we're going to go along to get along.
That's right.
We got to stand and draw a line.
Right. At some point, I can still accept someone, but I'm saying this is what I believe, and this is what's true. Now, you can do what you want, but I believe this and stand for truth. And it comes with a cost maybe sometimes.
So one of the responses that we said may come from this is the idea of fear. And why should we not fear?
Yeah, this is a big one, right? A lot of people can be not motivated by fear, but they're just
it's a pretty natural response when you realize the enormity of it. I mean, it's big and terrible.
And
all
it's fear
of these things.
getting involved. What can I do? There's a lot of aspects of fear. And 2 Timothy 1:7, what does it say?
For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind.
Look, we have done ministry in the past, and I'd lie if I told you that I never feared walking into some areas. I mean, we walked into some tough areas. And I remember one time we were in New Orleans, and there's a place called the Poppins. And because it was Mary, they called it Mary Poppins because there was so many gunshots. It was pop, pop, pop. So it was the Mary Poppins. And it was low income housing for sure. I mean, this wasn't a project, but it was close. And it was we were doing an outreach, and we're going passing out flyers, come to church, whatever. And I had a group of young people with me, and I remember one house, and we know these people, and there were like 5 or 6 gangbangers, all dressed up in their colors and everything, strapped up, guns, everything, just sitting on the porch. And if it was just me, I think I would have just been like waved at them and just kind of walked on by. But I had a group of young people, and I was supposed to be leading them. And I'm like, okay, I can't look like a chicken here. But man, those guys don't look happy right now. They don't look. A bunch of white dudes strolling up in their neighborhood. And so I'm just like, oh, Lord, here we go. I was afraid.
Yeah.
I was afraid. But I walked in, I opened the gate and said, hey, guys, got some flyers for you. And the one guy just didn't even move, just stared at me. But one of the guys took the paper, just said, hey, man, hope to see you. God bless, and walked away. But I was sweating a little bit. But so, getting involved in doing things doesn't always mean you'll be without fear. But to do something, even with that fear, that is courage, and that is boldness.
Fear is not a bad thing if it motivates you to do what's right and protect yourself.
Well, that's true. Don't walk off the cliff, right? But don't walk out in traffic. But God is with us.
Well, I think the problem is if we just go back to just wanting to keep ourselves in our little Christian bubble,
right?
And because we're afraid of what's all out there and it's all bad, it's like that's just not that's not what God wants from us.
No, there is a time maybe to retreat and to especially if things are going on in your family, we're like, hey, we need to pull back a little bit. But in the end, we can't be afraid because our kids are going to be curious. And if you can't give them straight answers or tell them they're going to want to go out there and see what's going on. And they're going to find people that will tell them what's going on and show them what's going on. So anyway.
So the next question we had here is, what is wrong with the social gospel?
What is wrong with the social?
What do you mean by that, Mike?
So you know what the social gospel is, right?
I do.
Okay. Right. So, digging wells in Africa and South America and getting involved in the abortion movement. This is all what we would call like the social gospel. Even probably human trafficking is social gospel. Doing good works. I'm not opposed to any of that, but it is not the gospel. We have to realize that sometimes we can throw ourselves so much into protecting this world that we forget about the true gospel. These people still need to hear the truth of the gospel.
Yes,
like saving them out of human trafficking and drugs and all this and still not giving the gospel is not doing anyone any good. Mm-hmm. So we got to be very careful with that. I'm all for helping society and all that. I mean, get involved wherever you want to get involved. But remember, Like we were trying to, for a whole year, we worked with refugees to teach them English. English as their second language, ESL. And it's funny because I'm terrible at English. and
I'm see what they're like now.
Yes. And the whole goal was, yes, to help them get acquainted in America and to teach them English, but was to give them the gospel.
Right.
Now, it didn't go over so well because they all moved away. But and it was so hard to teach them English for that year. But the whole point should be to still give them the gospel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the problem sometimes with the social gospel is that we feel like we're motivated by humanism. And humanism is like they have a bad life, and I want their life to be better. Here on earth. Mm-hmm. And that's fine, but everybody's life on earth is bad. Now, you might say, come on, man, I'd rather have my bad life in America than bad life, say, in Colombia.
I'm with you.
But we're all sinners, and we're all destined for hell. And so the greatest freedom that we can have is obviously Christ. And having him as our Savior is the greatest freedom. So while you're in slavery, while you're maybe not in drugs, you should be out of drugs. If there's things that you can't help necessarily, but the world can't touch you if you're in Christ, and that is the important thing. Now, in that process, digging wells in villages that don't have clean water and standing for abortion or anti-abortion or for life, standing for life, not for abortion, standing for life and maybe even getting behind a political figure that might help, pass some laws or things in your community. And those are good things. Those are great things in helping ending slavery, human trafficking and all that is a wonderful thing. It's just we want to remember that the Great Commission is to teach and to make disciples of Christ, and not just save people out of misery here on earth. Both can be done together. There's no doubt. I could go in and dig a well or be a doctor and help sick people and still give them the gospel. I think that's a very important thing.
So we've talked a lot about the responses and thrown out some things. It's tough. What do you look at? What you can do, but you got a couple of things here that what we really can do.
Yeah. So there's some things we can do, right?
Yep.
What's number one, babe?
Don't be a part of the problem.
That should be obvious, right?
Should be.
I would think. But so subtly, what do you mean don't be a part of the problem? Well, if you're a drug user, guess what you're doing? You're perpetuating the drug problem. Right. Drug cartels and people being enslaved, working on drug plantations or whatever. If you're looking at pornography, you should stop. Yeah. I mean, I can't say it any more clear, especially if you're out there looking at child porn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You better stop. I hope you get arrested, and I hope you spend time in jail if that is you. But even just pornography, you are perpetuating this stuff.
You are.
There people are selling to make money. It is a huge money maker.
You are part of the problem. You're consuming. They then can make money off of you.
Absolutely. So that's what we're talking about, being part of the problem. I remember one year we went to a camp, and this was such a weird story, but it makes sense for what we're saying. But he's a big person in the anti-abortion movement in Texas. And he went up and spoke. And part of his testimony was, unfortunately, he got one of his workers pregnant. And they weren't married. He was married to another woman and got this other girl pregnant, I think. Or maybe they didn't get married. He was just dating or something. I don't remember, but they didn't get married, but he got her pregnant. And they said, we had to have that conversation of, what do we do with this baby? I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Conversation.
Yes, exactly. Are you not what you preach? I mean, this is what the world hates with Christians, is that the hypocrisy. Now, they ended up giving the child up for adoption. But I'm like, oh, how honorable. You gave it up for adoption. Why don't you honor your word and wait for marriage and, not get this lady pregnant? So you're being part of the problem, so don't be a part of the problem. So that should be number one. That should be obvious.
There. Yeah, right. That's obvious. What's number two?
Teach your children. Now, when I say teach your children, warn them, explain, prepare them. And this is a big one, right?
It is.
So we have taught our children from a young age that to watch out for people that are touching you. Because this is much deeper than just human trafficking. We like a friend of ours was saying that, the biggest problem is when uncles come over or aunts or grandpas or, family members.
Yep.
And there's a lot of abuse that goes on. Now, that's abuse. That's not human trafficking, but that's still wrong.
Right.
So prepare your children in a reasonable way. Like, don't unload on a 5-year-old that can't handle it, right? But tell them that, hey, if people are touching you in certain places, you need to let us know. It's okay. Yeah. At certain ages, maybe explain to them the world out there. It's a dangerous place, but we don't need to be afraid unless you are in a war zone, maybe. But don't be afraid. Let them know what is going on in the world. And it could be a scary place, like you were talking about, just watching the things that you were watching, what you're telling us.
Yeah,
it was going to bring you down,
Well, I think the big thing is watch your children.
Watch your children.
Think, we just are so trusting of friends and family, and we don't know where our kids are. And I'm like, I believe when we stand before God on Judgment Day, He's going to say, what about your kid here? Yep. Where were you? And it's like, oh, well, I let them go play with the neighbors, or I let them, go with whoever. And it's like, you're responsible for your kids. You're responsible for what they see. You're responsible for what they hear, who they're talking to, who they're around. Like, you're going to give an account for that. So you need to know where your kids are.
Yeah, and don't trust just because you're at a Christian camp. Or you're at a
there's no safe
church,
place.
Or there's plenty of bad people in church.
Yes, there are.
And so you have to watch.
Yeah, so I got to go back because now everybody's wondering, what's Chuck watching? So I had just quickly, I had a string of events over a couple of days. So on Thursday night, I was talking to one of my daughters, and we were talking, somehow we got into the conversation of this whole transgender ideology, and I was comparing it in the way that it has actually progressed in our society to that of how Nazism came in to the world through Germany, and it's a slow, methodical progression.
Right.
And so I was talking about that Thursday night, and then Friday night I actually sat down with my girls and watched Sabina, which is Sabina Wormbrand, the story of her time during the Nazi years.
Right.
So I'm watching what I was talking about.
Her husband is the one who
started Voice of the Martyrs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And Torture for Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Saturday night I went and saw this movie. So it was a number of events there that just kind of kept piling on.
Cheerful one, but yes. So don't be a part of the problem. Watch your children, warn them, prepare them. That's a big one. And Proverbs 22:3 says, this is one of your favorites, babe.
It says,
an inside joke.
A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished.
Now, the reason we laugh is that people blow this one way up, and they use this for everything and protect us from everything. And we got to go retreat and get our guns and get our pill boxes. And then, because society, we withdraw ourselves because we're prudent and we're wise. I don't know if that's exactly what it's talking about, but we do need to be wise. We need to be watching. We need to be aware. Maybe not too aware, but you want to be aware of what's going on out there. And there is a time to hide yourself.
Yeah, there's a time to hide yourself. But I think the two key words in Proverbs 22:3, one is prudent. Realize the man was prudent.
Yes.
And, or contrast that to simple.
Yes.
And don't be simple and get punished.
Yes. Yeah, but that's right. But the simple pass on and are punished. So it's be wise, be very wise. Don't just let your kids go out into community and who knows what they're being taught, or someone could take them, and it's terrible, the things. So we were criticized very early on. We were very protective of our young children, and I think we've done a pretty good job of slowly letting them out from that point on until they're adults now. Most of them, but that early phase, we took it so seriously that no one else watched our kid. The only one to watch our kids was your parents when we brought another kid into the world. So for many years it was just us, and we had to get creative with date nights and things like that. But I wasn't I didn't want babysitters abusing our kids, and I know that sounds very cynical and like untrusting, but I wasn't taking a chance. I get one shot. One shot with my kids, and I do not want them to be damaged and abused and taken. And, so while we're watching, when we're taking them out, we watch. We go in big groups, and so be very, very careful. You can't protect them from everything. We know that, but keep an eye on them. Be wise. Don't just assume, he's with the neighbor kid. He's not going to do anything. I mean, we know some stories, and they're not good stories, and I can't share them here, but yeah.
Stories of things that wouldn't have happened if parents were watching.
Right, so. And especially this day and age where everybody is on these things, and they're constantly on the phone. Yep, I hear you, Johnny. Yeah, what do you want? Okay, just put the phone down. It's not worth it. Just watch your kids. Yeah. It's your job. So anyway, I know this is kind of a sobering issue, but there are a lot of social issues, and we just named a few of them. I know there's a lot of different things you can get involved with, but don't be afraid. I think that's be of a strong mind and courage. No, that's not how it goes. But but be strong, be courageous. Don't live in fear. These things are around us. There is no doubt. You need to be aware. But we don't need to live in fear. I think that is the key, or else you'll lose your mind. Yeah, you'll lose your mind.
And remember that there, yes, this world is full of evil and good. Yeah, but God overcame the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's
good. We don't have to live in fear.
Absolutely.
We know the answer. We have the truth. Stand with the truth. Proclaim the truth. Yep. Bring others to the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do your part, whatever part that is. So, all right, babe. Any last words?
I don't think so.
All right. I don't know what segments left. I don't know what it's music or whatever. So anyway, let's go ahead and get out of here, Joshua.